Hi everyone, we're back to read our book and well, this is Max. He's been kind of needy today. He's been up here trying to see what's going on. So he may or may not stay up here while we read our book. We'll try to see if he'll go get busy. But don't be surprised if he's back up here. He's a little bit like Winn-Dixie in that he likes to be a part of the family. All right, guys, so we're still into Because of Winn-Dixie. Might be lucky enough to finish it today. Remember, we're on chapter 19, so we're going to go ahead and get started and see where we end up. In the morning, me and Winn-Dixie went down to sweep the pet store, and I took a Letterman's lozenge for Otis. Is it Halloween? Otis asked when I handed him the candy. No, I said. Why? Well, you're giving me candy. It's just a gift, I told him, for today. Oh, said Otis. He unwrapped the Letterman's lozenge and put it in his mouth, and after a minute, tears started rolling down his face. Thank you, he said. Do you like it? I asked him. He nodded his head. It tastes good, but it also tastes a little bit like being in jail. Gertrude squawked. She picked up the Letterman's lozenge wrapper in her beak and then dropped it and looked around. Gertrude, she screamed again. You can't have any, I told her. It's not for birds. Then real quick, before I lost my nerve, I said, Otis, what were you in jail for? Are you a murderer? No, ma'am, he said. Are you a burglar? No, ma'am, Otis said again. He sucked on his candy and stared down at his pointy-toed boots. You don't have to tell me, I said. I was just wondering. I ain't a dangerous man, Otis said, if that's what you're thinking. I'm lonely, but I ain't dangerous. Okay, I said, and I went into the back room to get my broom. When I came back out, Otis was standing there where I left him, still staring down at his feet. It was on account of the music, he said. What was, I asked. Why I went to jail. It was on account of the music. What happened? I couldn't stop playing my guitar. Used to be I played it on the street and sometimes people would give me money. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because the music is better if someone is listening. Anyway, the police came and they told me to stop it. They said how I was breaking the law, and the whole time they were talking to me, I went right on playing music, and that made them mad. They tried to put handcuffs on me, he sighed. I didn't like that. I wouldn't have been able to play my guitar with them things on. And then what happened, I asked him. I hit them, he whispered. You hit the police? Mm-hmm. One of them, I knocked him out. Then I went to jail, and they locked me up and wouldn't let me have my guitar. And when they finally let me out, they made me a promise. I wouldn't never play my guitar on the street again. He looked up at me real quick and then back down at his boots. And I don't. I only play it in here for the animals. Gertrude, the human Gertrude, she owns this shop, and she gave me the job when she read about me in the paper, and she said it's all right for me to play music for the animals. You played music for me and Winn-Dixie and Sweetie Pie, I said. Yeah, he agreed, but you ain't on the street. Thank you for telling me about it, Otis, I said. It's all right, he said. I don't mind. Sweetie Pie came in, and I gave her a Letterman's lozenge, and she spit it right out. She said that it tasted bad. She said that it tasted like not having a dog. I swept the floor real slow that day. I wanted to keep Otis company. I didn't want him to be lonely. Sometimes it seemed like everybody in the world was lonely. I thought about my mama. Thinking about her was the same as the hole you keep on feeling with your tongue after you lose a tooth. Time after time, my mind kept going to the empty spot. the spot where I felt like she should be. Chapter 20. Went to the eye doctor today, got my eyes dilated, so some of the words are a little crazy tonight, so I apologize. When I told Gloria Dump about Otis and how he got arrested, she laughed so hard she had to grab hold of her false teeth so they wouldn't fall out of her mouth. "Woo-wee," she said when she finally done laughing. "That sure is some dangerous criminal." "He's a lonely man," I told her. "He just wants to play his music for somebody." Gloria wiped her eyes with the hem of her dress. "I know it, sugar," she said, "but sometimes things aren't so sad. They get to be funny." "You know what else?" I said. "I still think about sad things. That girl I told you about, the pinched face one, Amanda? Well, her brother drowned last year. He was only 5 years old, the same age as Sweetie Pie Thomas." Gloria stopped smiling. She nodded her head. "I remember hearing about that," she said. "I remember hearing about that little boy that drowned." "That's why Amanda is so pinched-faced," I said. "She misses her brother." "Most likely," Gloria agreed. "Do you think everybody misses somebody like I miss my mama?" "Mm-hmm," said Gloria. She closed her eyes. "I believe sometimes the whole world has an aching heart." I couldn't stand to think about sad things that couldn't be helped anymore. So I said, "Do you want to hear some more about David Copperfield?" "Yes, indeed," Gloria said. "I've been looking forward to it all day. Let's see what happened to that child." I opened up David Copperfield and started to read, but the whole time I was thinking about Otis, worrying about him not being allowed to play his guitar for people. I needed to find him some people to listen to his music. Then it came to me, the solution for Otis's aching heart, for everyone's aching heart. "I know what we need to do," I said. I slammed the book shut. Winn-Dixie's head shot up from underneath Gloria's chair. He looked around all nervous-like. "Huh," said Gloria Dump. "Have a party," I told her. "We need to have a party and invite Miss Franny Block, the preacher, Otis, and Otis can play his guitar for everybody. Sweetie Pie can come too. She listens to his music good." "We who?" Gloria asked. "We, me and you. We can make some food and have the party right here in the yard." "Mm-hmm," said Gloria Dump. "We can make peanut butter sandwiches and cut them out in triangles to make them look fancy." "Lord," said Gloria Dump, "I don't know if the whole world likes peanut butter as much as you and me and this dog." "Okay then," I said, "we could make egg salad sandwiches. Adults like those." "You know how to make egg salad?" "No, ma'am," I said. "I don't have a mama around to teach me things like that. But I bet you know. I bet you can teach me. Please?" "Maybe," said Gloria Dump. She put her hand on Winn-Dixie's head. She smiled at me. I knew she was telling me yes. "Thank you," I said. I went over and hugged her. I squeezed her hard. Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and tried to get in between the two of us. He couldn't stand being laughed out of anything. "It's going to be the best party ever," I told Gloria. "You got to make me one promise, though," Gloria said. "All right," I told her. "You got to invite them Dewberry boys." "Dunlap and Stevie?" "Mm-hmm. Ain't going to be no party unless you invite them." "I have to?" "Yes," said Gloria Dump. "You promise me." "I promise," she said. I didn't like the idea, but I promised. I started inviting people right away. I asked the preacher first. "Daddy," I said. "Opal?" the preacher asked back. "Daddy, me and Winn-Dixie and Gloria Dump are having a party." "Well," said the preacher, "that's nice. You have a good time." "Daddy," I said, "I'm telling you because you're invited." "Oh," said the preacher. He rubbed his nose. "I see. Can you come?" I asked him. He sighed. "I don't see why not," he said. "Miss Franny Block took to the idea right away. A party, she said, and clapped her hands together. Yes, ma'am, I told her. It's going to be a big old party. We're going to have it in Gloria Dump's yard. And we're going to serve egg salad sandwiches. And there's going to be live music. And it'll be good for your heart. That sounds lovely, Miss Franny said. And then she pointed to the back of the library and whispered, maybe you should ask Amanda too. She probably won't want to come, I said. She doesn't like me very much. Ask her and see what she says, Miss Franny whispered. So I walked to the back of the library and I asked Amanda Wilkinson in my best manners voice to please come to the party. She looked around all nervous and stuff. A party, she said. Yes, I said. I sure would like if you could come. She stared at me with her mouth open. Okay. After a minute, yeah, thank you. I'd love to. And just like that, I promised Gloria, I asked the Dewberry boys. I ain't going to no party at a witch's house, Stevie said. Dunlap knocked Stevie with his elbow. We'll come, he said. We will not, said Stevie. That witch might cook us up in her big old witch pot. I don't care if you come or not, I told them. I'm just asking because I promised I would. We'll be there, said Dunlap, and he nodded at me and smiled. Sweetie Pie was very excited when I invited her. What's the theme, she asked. Well, there ain't one, I said. You gotta think of a theme, she told me. She stuck her knuckle in her mouth and then pulled it back out. It ain't a party without a theme. Is this dog coming? She asked. She wrapped her arms around Winn-Dixie and squeezed him so hard that her eyes almost popped out of his eyes almost popped out of his head. Yes, I told her. Good, she said. You could make the theme. It could be a dog party. I'll think about it, I told her. The last person I asked was Otis. I told him all about the party and that he was invited. He said, no, thank you. Why not, I asked. I don't like parties, said Otis. Please, I begged him. It won't be a party unless you come. I'll give you a whole free week of sweeping and rearranging and dusting if you come to the party. That's what I'll do. A whole week for free? Otis said, looking at me. Yes, sir, I told him. But I don't have to talk to people, right? No, sir, I said, you don't. But bring your guitar. Maybe you could play us some music. Maybe, said Otis. He looked down at his boots again real quick, trying to hide his smile. Thank you, I told him. Thank you for deciding to come. All right, I think I'm going to just go one more chapter, and then we'll finish up tomorrow with the whole, probably have about 3 more left after that. So this is chapter 21. After I got Otis convinced to come, the rest of getting ready for the party was easy and fun. Me and Gloria decided to have the party at night when it would be cooler. In the afternoon before we worked in Gloria's kitchen and made egg salad sandwiches. We cut them in triangles and cut off the crust and put little toothpicks with frilly tops in them. Winn-Dixie sat in the kitchen and looked at us the whole time. He kept on wagging his tail. That dog thinks he's making his sandwiches for him, said Gloria Dump. Winn-Dixie showed Gloria all his teeth. These ain't for you, she told him. But when she thought I wasn't looking, she gave Winn-Dixie an egg salad sandwich without the toothpick. We also made punch. We mixed together orange juice and grapefruit juice and soda in a big bowl. Gloria called it dump punch. She said it's world famous for it, and I had never heard of it before. The last thing we did was decorate the yard all up. I strung pink and orange and yellow crepe paper in the trees to make it look fancy. We also filled up paper bags with sand and put candles in them. And right before it was time for the party to start, I went around and lit all the candles. It turned Gloria Dump's yard into a fairyland. Said Gloria Dump, looking around. Even somebody with bad eyes can tell it looks good. It did look pretty. It looked so pretty that it made my heart feel funny, all swollen and full. And I wished desperately that I knew where my mama was. She would come to this party too. Miss Franny Block was the first person to arrive. She was wearing a pretty green dress that was all shiny and shimmery, and she had on high-heeled shoes that made her wobbly back and forth when she walked. Even when she was standing still, she still kind of swayed like she was standing on a boat. She was carrying a big glass bowl of Ledimus lozenges. I brought a little after-dinner treat, she said, handing the bowl to me. Thank you, I said. I put the bowl on the table next to the egg salad sandwiches and the punch. Then I introduced Miss Franny to Gloria. They shook hands and said polite things to each other. And then Sweetie Pie's mother came by with Sweetie Pie. Sweetie Pie had a whole handful of pictures of dogs that she had cut out of magazines. It's to help you with your theme, she said. You can use them to decorate. I brung tape too. And she started going around taping the pictures of the dogs to the trees and the chairs and the tables. She ain't talked about nothing but this party all day long, said her mother. Can you walk her home when it's over? I promised that I would, and then I introduced Sweetie Pie to Miss Franny and Gloria. And right after that, the preacher showed up. He was wearing a coat and tie and looked real serious. He shook Gloria Dump's hand and Miss Franny Block's hand and said how pleased he was to meet them both and how he had heard nothing but good things about both of them. He patted Sweetie Pie on the head and said it was good to see her outside of church. And the whole time, Winn-Dixie was standing right in the middle of everybody, wagging his tail so hard that I thought for sure he would knock Miss Franny right off her high heels. Amanda Wilkinson came, and she had her blonde hair all curled up, and she looked shy and not as mean as usual. And I stood real close to her and introduced her to Gloria Dump. I was surprised at how glad I was to see Amanda. And I wanted to tell her I knew about Carson. I wanted to tell her I understood about losing people, but I didn't say anything. I was just extra nice. We were all standing around smiling at one another and acting kind of nervous when a real screechy voice said, Gertrude is a pretty bird. Winn-Dixie's ears went straight up on his head, and he barked and looked around. I looked too, but I didn't see Gertrude or Otis. I'll be right back, I said to everybody. Me and Winn-Dixie went running around to the front of the house, and sure enough, standing there on the sidewalk was Otis. He had his guitar on his back and Gertrude on his shoulder. And in his hands, he was holding the biggest jar of pickles I had ever seen in my life. Otis, I said to him, come on around back. That's where the party is. Oh, he said, but he didn't move. He just stood there, holding on to his jar of pickles. Dog, screeched Gertrude. She flew off of Otis's shoulder and landed on Winn-Dixie's head. It's all right, Otis, I told him. It's just a few people, hardly any people at all. Oh, said Otis again. He looked around like he was lost. Then he held up his jar of pickles. I brought pickles, he said. I saw them, I said. It's just exactly what we needed. They will go perfect with the egg salad sandwiches. I talked to him real soft and gentle and low, like he was a wild animal, and I was trying to get him to take food out of his hand. He took one tiny step forward. Come on, I whispered. I started walking, and Winn-Dixie followed. And when I turned around, I saw Otis was following me too. Maybe we'll go one more. Otis followed me all the way into the backyard where the party was. Before he could run away, I introduced him to the preacher. Daddy, I said, this is Otis. He's the one who runs Gertrude's Pet. He's the one who plays the guitar so good. How do you do, said the preacher. He stuck his hand out to Otis, and Otis stood there and shuffled his big jar of pickles back and forth, trying to free up a hand to offer back to the preacher. Finally, he ended up bending over and setting the jar down on the ground. But when he did, his guitar slid forward and hit him in the head with a little boing sound. Sweetie Pie laughed and pointed at him like he was doing the whole thing on purpose just to amuse her. Ouch, said Otis. He stood back up and took the guitar off his shoulder, put it down on the ground next to the jar of pickles, and then he wiped his hand on his pants and stuck it out to the preacher, who took it and said, It sure is a pleasure to shake your hand. Thank you, said Otis. I brought pickles. I noticed, said the preacher. After the preacher and Otis were done shaking hands, I introduced Otis to Miss Franny Block and to Amanda, and then I introduced him to Gloria Dump. Gloria took his hand and smiled at him, and Otis looked right in her eyes and smiled back. He smiled big. I brought a jar of pickles to your party, Otis told her, and I am so glad, she said. It just ain't a party without pickles. Otis looked down at his big jar of pickles. His face was all red. Opal, said Gloria, when are them boys getting here? I don't know, I said. I shrugged. I told them what time we were starting. What I didn't tell her was that they probably weren't coming because they were afraid to go to the party at a witch's house. Well, said Gloria, we got egg salad sandwiches, we got dump punch, we got pickles, we got dog pictures, we got lettuce lozenge, and we got a preacher who can bless this party for us. Gloria Dump looked over at the preacher. He nodded his head at Gloria and cleared his throat and said, Dear God, thank you for her warm summer nights and candlelight and good food. But thank you most of all for friends. We appreciate the complicated and wonderful gifts you give us in each other. And we appreciate the task you put down before us of loving each other the best we can, even as you love us. We pray in Christ's name, amen. Amen, said Gloria Dump. Amen, I whispered. Gertrude, croaked Gertrude. Are we fixing to eat now, Sweetie Pie asked. Shh, said Amanda. Winn-Dixie sneezed. There was a far-off rumble of thunder. I thought at first that it was Winn-Dixie's stomach growling. It ain't supposed to rain, said Gloria Dump. They didn't predict no rain. This dress is silk, said Miss Franny Block. I can't get it wet. Maybe we should go inside, said Amanda. The preacher looked up at the sky, and just then the rain came pouring down. Might as well see what's happening at this party that's about ready to get rained out. So we're on to chapter 23. Save the sandwiches, Gloria Dump yelled back to me. Save the punch. I got my dog pictures, screamed Sweetie Pie. She went running around, tearing them off the trees and the chairs. Don't worry, she kept shouting. I got them. I grabbed the platter of egg salad sandwiches, and the preacher grabbed the punch, and we ran into the kitchen with them. And when I came back outside, I saw that Amanda was holed up of Miss Franny Block and was helping her to the house. Miss Franny was so teetery in her high heels, and the rain would have knocked her right off if Amanda hadn't held on to her. I grabbed Gloria Dump's arm. It's all right, she said, but she put her hand on my arm and held on to me tight. I looked around the garden before we left. All the crepe paper was melted and the candles were out, and then I saw Otis. He was standing there by his jar of pickles, looking down at his feet. Otis, I hollered at him over the rain. Come on, we're going inside. When he got to the kitchen, Amanda and Miss Franny were laughing and shaking themselves like dogs. What a downpour, said Miss Franny. Wasn't that something? That came right out of nowhere, said the preacher. Whoo-wee, said Gloria. Dog, squawked Gertrude, and I looked at her. She was sitting on the kitchen table. The thunder was really booming and cracking. Oh, no, I said. I looked around the kitchen. Don't worry, said Sweetie Pie. I saved them dog pictures. I got them right here. She waved around her wad of magazine pages. Where's Winn-Dixie? I shouted. I forgot about him. I was just thinking about the party, and I forgot about Winn-Dixie. I forgot about protecting him from the thunder. Now, Opal, said the preacher. It's probably right in the yard, hiding underneath the chair. Come on, you and I will look. Hold on, said Gloria Dump. Let me get you a flashlight and some umbrella. But I didn't want to wait. I went running out into the yard. I looked under all the chairs and around all the bushes and trees. I called his name real loud. I felt like crying. It was my fault. I was supposed to hold on to him, and I forgot. Opal, I heard the preacher call. I looked up. He was standing on the porch with Gloria, and Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry were standing there too. Your guests are here, the preacher said. I don't care, I hollered. Come on up here, Gloria Dump said, her voice all hard and serious. She shone her flashlight out at me. I walked up to the porch and she handed me the flashlight. "Tell them boys, hey," she said. "Tell them you are glad they came and that you will be right back just as soon as you find your dog." "Hey," I said, "thank you for coming. I just got to find Winn-Dixie and then I'll be right back." Stevie stared at me with his mouth wide open. "You want me to help you?" Dunlap asked. I shook my head. I tried not to cry. "Come on here, child," Gloria Dump said. She reached for me and pulled me close to her and whispered in my ears, "There ain't no way you can hold on to something that wants to go. You understand? You can only love what you got while you got it." She squeezed me hard. "Good luck now," she called at me, and the preacher stepped off the porch and out into the rain. "Good luck," Miss Franny called from the kitchen. "That dog ain't lost." I heard Sweetie Pie holler to somebody inside. "That dog's too smart to get lost." I turned around and looked back. At the last thing I saw was the porch light shining on Dunlap, Dewberry's bald head. It made me sad, him standing on Gloria's porch, his bald head glowing. Dunlap saw me looking, and he raised up his hand and waved to me, and I didn't wave back. Chapter 24. Me and the preacher started walking and calling Winn-Dixie's name. I was glad it was raining so hard because it made it easy to cry. I cried and I cried and I cried the whole time I was calling for Winn-Dixie. "Winn-Dixie," I screamed. "Winn-Dixie," the preacher shouted. And then we whistled loud and long, but Winn-Dixie didn't show up. We walked all through downtown. We walked past the Dewberry's house and the Herman W. Block Memorial Library and Sweetie Pie's yellow house and Gertrude's Pets. We walked out to the Friendly Corners trailer park, looked underneath our trailer. We walked all the way out to the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. We walked past the railroad tracks and right on down Highway 50. Cars were rushing past us and their headlights glowed red, their taillights glowed red, like mean eyes staring at us. "Daddy," I said, "Daddy, what if he got run over?" "Opal," said the preacher, "we can't worry about things that might have happened. All we can do is keep looking." We walked and walked, and in my head, I started on a list of 10 things that I knew about Winn-Dixie. Things I could write on a big old poster and put up around the neighborhood. Things that would help people look for him. Number 1 was he had a pathological fear of thunderstorms. Number 2 was he liked to smile using all his teeth. Number 3 was he could run fast. Number 4 was that he snored. Number 5 was that he could catch mice without squishing them to death. Number 6 was that he liked to meet people. Number 7 was he liked to eat peanut butter. Number 8 was he couldn't stand to be left alone. Number 9 was he liked to sit on couches and sleep in beds. Number 10 was he didn't mind going to church. I kept on going over and over the list in my head. I memorized it the same way I'd memorized the list of 10 things about my mama. I memorized it so if I didn't find him, I would have some part of him to hold on to. But at the same time, I thought of something I had never thought of before. And that was a list of things couldn't even begin to show somebody the real Winn-Dixie, just like a list of 10 things that couldn't ever get me to know my mama. And thinking about that made me cry even more. Me and the preacher looked for a long time, and finally he said he had to quit. "But Daddy," I said, "Winn-Dixie's out there somewhere. We can't leave him." "Opal," the preacher said, "we have looked and looked, and there's only so much looking we can do." "I can't believe you're going to give up," I told him. "India," "Opal," the preacher said, rubbing his nose, "don't argue with me." I stood and stared at him. The rain had let up some. It was mostly a drizzle now. "It's time to head back," the preacher said. "No," I told him, "you go ahead and go, but I'm going to keep on looking." "Opal," the preacher said in a real soft voice, "it's time to give up." "You always give up," I shouted. "You always pulling your head inside your stupid old turtle shell. I bet you didn't even go out looking for my mama when she left. I bet you just let her run off too." "Baby," the preacher said, "I couldn't stop her. I tried. Don't you think I wanted her to stay too? Don't you think I miss her every day?" He spread his arms out wide, then dropped them to his side. "I tried," he said. "I tried." Then he did something I couldn't believe. He started to cry. The preacher was crying. His shoulders were moving up and down, and he was making snuffling noises. "And don't believe that losing Winn-Dixie doesn't upset me as much as it does you," he said. "I love that dog. I love him too." "Daddy," I said. I went and wrapped my arms around his waist. He was crying so hard he was shaking. "It's all right," I told him. "It's okay." "Shh," I said to him, like he was a scared little kid. "Everything will be okay." We stood there hugging and rocking back and forth, and after a while the preacher stopped shaking, and I still held on to him. And I finally got the nerve to ask the question I wanted to ask. "Do you think she's ever going to come back?" I whispered. "No," the preacher said. "No, I do not. I've hoped and prayed that dream about it for years, but I don't think she'll ever come back." Gloria says that she can't hold on to anything, that you can only love what you've got whilst you've got it. "She's right," the preacher said. "Gloria Dump is right. I'm not ready to let Winn-Dixie go. If I had forgotten about him for a minute, what with him thinking about my mama..." "We'll keep looking," said the preacher. "The two of us will keep looking for him. But do you know what? I just realized something, India Opal. When I told your mama took everything with her, I forgot one thing. One very important thing she left behind." "What?" I said. "You," he said. "Thank God your mama left you." And he hugged me tighter. "And I'm glad I got you," I told him. And I meant it. It took hold of his hand, and we started walking into town, calling and whistling for Winn-Dixie the whole way. Chapter 25, and that, well, we got a couple more. We might as well just go ahead and finish it tonight. We heard the music before we even got to Gloria Dump's house. We heard it almost a block away. It was a guitar playing and singing and clapping. "Wonder what's going on?" my father asked. We walked up to Gloria's sidewalk and around back, through her yard and into her kitchen. And what we saw was Otis playing his guitar, and Miss Franny and Gloria sitting there smiling and singing, and Gloria holding Sweetie Pie in her lap. Amanda and Dunlap and Stevie were sitting on the kitchen floor, clapping along and having the best possible time. Even Amanda was smiling. I couldn't believe it. They were so happy when Winn-Dixie was missing. "We didn't find him," I shouted at them. The music stopped and Gloria Dump looked at me and said, "Child, we know you didn't find him. You didn't find him because he's right here all along." She took her cane and poked at something under her chair. "Come on out there," she said. There was a snuffle and a sigh. "He's asleep," she said. "He's plumb wore out." She poked around with her cane again, and Winn-Dixie stood up from underneath her chair and yawned. "Winn-Dixie," I hollered. "Dog," Gertrude squawked. Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and showed me all his teeth and sneezed. I went pushing past everybody. I dropped to the floor and I wrapped my arms around him. "Where have you been?" I asked. He yawned again. "How did you find him?" I asked. "Now, there's the story," said Miss Franny. "Gloria, why don't you tell it?" "Well," said Gloria Dump, "we was all just sitting around waiting on you two, and after I convinced the Dewberry boys that I ain't no scary witch and all full of spells and potions..." "She ain't no witch," Stevie said. He shook his bald head. He looked kind of disappointed. "Nah," said Dunlap, "she ain't. If she was, she would have turned us into toads by now." He grinned. "I could have told you that she wasn't a witch. Witches don't exist," said Amanda. "They are just myths." "All right now," said Gloria. "What happened was we got through all them witchy things, and then Franny said, 'Why don't we have a little music while we wait for you two to get back?' And so Otis played his guitar, and woo-wee! There ain't a song we don't know. And if we don't know, we can pick it right up. Quick, if you hum it to me. He has a gift." Gloria stopped and smiled over at Otis, and he smiled back. He looked all lit up from the inside. "Tell what happened," Sweetie Pie said. "Tell about that dog." "So," said Gloria, Franny and me, we started thinking about all these songs we knew from when we was girls. We got Otis to play them, and we started singing them, teaching the words to these children. And then somebody sneezed. Sweetie Pie shouted. That's right, said Gloria. Somebody sneezed, and it wasn't none of us. So we looked around, wondering who did, thinking that maybe we got a burglar in the house. We looked around, and we didn't see nothing. We started into singing again, and sure enough, there was another big achoo! Sounded like coming from my bedroom. So I sent Otis in there. I said, Otis, go in there and see who's sneezing. So Otis went in, and you know what he found? I shook my head. Winn-Dixie, shouted Sweetie Pie. That dog of yours was all hidden underneath my bed, squeezed under there like the world was about to end. But he was smiling like a fool every time he heard Otis play the guitar, smiling so hard he sneezed. My daddy laughed. It is true, Miss Franny said. It's the truth, said Stevie. Dunlap nodded and smiled right at me. So Gloria Dump said, Otis played his guitar right to that dog. And a little bit at a time, Winn-Dixie came creeping out from under the bed. He was covered in dust, said Amanda. He looked like a ghost, said Dunlap. Yeah, said Sweetie Pie, just like a ghost. Said Gloria. Looked just like a ghost. Anyway, the storm stopped after a while, and your dog settled in under my feet and fell asleep. And that's where he's been ever since, just waiting on you to come back to find him. Winn-Dixie, I said. I hugged him so tight he wheezed. We were out there whistling and calling for you, and you were here all along. Thank you, I said to everybody. Well, said Gloria Dump, we didn't do nothing. We just sat here and waited and sang them songs. We all got to be good friends. Now, the punch ain't nothing but water, and the egg salad sandwiches got tore up by the rain. You got to get them with a spoon if you want egg salad, but we got pickles to eat and lettuce lozenges, and we still got a party going on. My daddy pulled out of a kitchen chair and sat down. Otis, he said, do you know any hymns? I know some, said Otis. You hum it, said Miss Franny, nodding her head, and he can play it. So my daddy started humming something, and Otis started picking it up on the guitar, and Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and lay back down underneath Gloria's chair. I looked around the room at all the different faces, and I felt my heart swell up inside with a pure happiness. I'll be back in a minute, I said. But they were all singing now and laughing, and Winn-Dixie was snoring, and no one heard me. Chapter 26, and that should be our last one tonight. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the clouds had gone away, and the sky was so clear it seemed like I could see every star ever made. I walked all the way to the back of Gloria Dump's yard. I walked back there and looked at her mistake tree. The bottles were quiet. There wasn't a breeze, so they were just hanging there. I looked at the tree, and then I looked at the sky. Mama, I said, just like she was standing right beside me, I know 10 things about you, and that's not enough. That's not enough, but Daddy is going to tell me more. I know he will. Now that he knows you're not coming back. He misses you, and I miss you. But my heart doesn't feel empty anymore. It's full all the way up. I'll still think about you, I promise, but probably not as much as I did this summer. That's what I said that night underneath Gloria Dump's mistake tree. And after I was done saying it, I just stared up at the sky, looking at the constellations and planets. And then I remembered my own tree, the one Gloria had helped me plant. I hadn't looked at it for a long time. I went crawling around on my hands and knees searching for it. And when I found it, I was surprised at how much it had grown. It was still small. It still looked more like a plant than a tree. But the leaves and the branches felt real strong and good and right. And I was down there on my knees when I heard a voice say, "Are you praying?" I looked up. It was Dunlap. "No," I said, "I'm not praying. I'm thinking." He crossed his arms and looked down at me. "What about?" he asked. "All kinds of different things," I said. "I'm sorry that I called you and Stevie bald-headed babies." "That's all right," he said. "Gloria told me to come out here and get you." "I told you she wasn't a witch." "I know it," he said. I knew it all along. I was just teasing you. Oh, I said. I looked at him close. It was hard to see him good in the dark. Ain't you ever going to stand up? He asked. Yeah, I said. And then he surprised me. He did something I never in a million years thought a Dewberry boy would do. He held out his hand to help me up, and I took it. I let him pull me to my feet. I'll race you back to the house, Dunlap said, and we started to run. Okay, I shouted, but I'm warning you, I'm fast. We ran, and I beat him. I touched the corner of Gloria Dump's house right before he did. You shouldn't be running around in the dark, said Amanda. She was standing on the porch looking at us. You could trip over something. Aw, Amanda, said Dunlap, and he shook his head. Aw, Amanda, I said too, and then I remembered Carson, and I felt bad for her. I went up on the porch and took hold of her hand and pulled on her. Come on, I said, let's go inside. India Opal, Dad said, when me and Amanda and Dunlap walked in. Are you here to sing some songs with us? Yes, sir, I said, only I don't know that many songs. We'll teach you, he said. He smiled at me real big. It was a good thing to see. That's right, said Gloria Dump. We will. Sweetie Pie was still sitting in her lap, but her eyes were closed. Care for a Lettuce lozenge, Miss Franny asked, passing me a bowl. Thank you, I told her. I took a Lettuce lozenge and unwrapped it and put it in my mouth. Do you want a pickle, Otis asked, holding up his big jar of pickles. No, thank you, I said. Not right now. Winn-Dixie came out from underneath Gloria Dump's chair. We sat down next to me and leaned into me the same as I was leaning into my daddy. And Amanda stood right there beside me. And when I looked over at her, she didn't look pinched-faced at all to me. Dunlap cracked his knuckles and said, Well, are we going to sing or what? Yeah, Stevie echoed. Are we going to sing or what? Let's sing, said Sweetie Pie, opening her eyes and sitting up straight. Let's sing for the dog. Otis laughed and strummed his guitar, and the flavor of the Lettuce lozenge opened in my mouth like a flower blooming, all sweet and sad. And then Otis and Gloria and Stevie and Miss Franny and Dunlap and Amanda and Sweetie Pie and my daddy all started to sing a song, and I listened careful so I could learn it right. That's the end. So they learned to be really good friends. They learned to accept each other for all their differences. They learned to be really good friends. Each of them had their own things that happened in their lives, but they learned to love again, and they learned to be the best of friends. And I hope each of you have an absolute best friend, and always remember kindness. And I hope all of you have a good night's sleep, and I hope that tomorrow you guys are ready for school. And apparently Max thought he would come back up here and say goodnight to all of you. I think he enjoyed the book too. Say goodnight, Max. Good night to all of you.